I told you my deal, and I'm going back to your thing. All right. Of my $9,400 a year and just getting rejected for 11 years. Give me the early days of trying to make Kenneth Cole a brand of the grind, of your grind.
So, you know, I've always been very resourceful. I've always believed that, people said to me, I left what I was doing. I was working with my father, and he had a small shoe factory in Brooklyn. And people say, well, what would you have done if it didn't work? And I said to them, that was never an option. I just never contemplated that. I just knew it would work. But what I don't tell people is I didn't know what it was. And I knew I would figure it out every day. And that one day it may change from the day before the next. And I was pivoting before that was a popular thing to do. And especially in the fashion business. So you just don't know what tomorrow has in store. And again, as I said before, what's fashionable to me isn't to you, and what's fashionable today isn't tomorrow. So how do I continue to be relevant? How do I continue to have a reason to exist? And so at the very beginning, I had very little money, and I needed to get in business quickly because I knew I needed to get a return on that. And I also knew then, not much different than today, that 60-70% of new startup companies don't make it the first year because they underestimate the amount of money they need and or the time it takes to have a return on what they have. So I knew I needed to move quickly. I named the company Kenneth Cole because you can usually get your own name registered in those days. And there wasn't these search engines, so I could find out the universe of what labels could be available. And that could take a year or two. And then first you find out it still doesn't work. So I used my own name. Ran to Italy, knew I had a better chance of getting credit from a shoe factory that needed business than from a American bank that didn't. And I designed a cool line of ladies' shoes, came back, had to sell it. And I had two choices in those days. Take a booth at one of those big fancy shoe shows and be one of literally thousands. Or I could take a room at the Hilton Hotel and
see, I love this. This is what I love. Go ahead.
There was maybe three choices. One of thousands, take a room at the Hilton Hotel where there were 1,100 other companies, 30 floors, 30 some odd companies per floor, and still no identity, still at not an insignificant cost. Or I could have, if I was really fortunate, take a big fancy showroom in a fancy building within a 2-block radius of the Hilton Hotel. And I didn't have the money or the means to do that. So I had a little bit of time, and on a whim, I was thinking, how about if I reached out to a friend in the trucking business, and I said, if I could figure out to park one of your 40-foot trailers across the street from this Hilton Hotel in front of one of those fancy buildings with all my fancy competitors, would you lend me the truck? He said, sure, jerk. You can't park a bicycle in New York for 10 minutes, let alone a truck for 4 days. And I said, if I could figure it out, will you lend it to me? He said, figure it out, I'll help you decorate it. So I called the mayor's office, it was Mayor Koch at the time. I said, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, how does one get permission to park a 40-foot truck on the corner of 6th Avenue and 56th Street? The answer is, sorry, son, they don't. This is New York. We give permission only in two circumstances. If you're a utility company servicing our streets, AT&T, Con Ed, or if you are a production company shooting a full-length motion picture, because we were going through an I Love New York campaign in the early 80s. I think we have been ever since.
Right.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hung up the phone, went to the stationery store, changed my letterhead from Kenneth Cole Inc. to Kenneth Cole Productions Inc.
Wow.
It cost me $14. Filed for a permit the next morning for permission to shoot a full-length motion picture called The Birth of a Shoe Company. We opened for business on December 2nd. I had 2 New York policemen as my doorman, compliments of our fine mayor. And I had Klieg lights, and I had stanchions, and I had a director. Sometimes there was film in his camera, sometimes there wasn't.
Right.
And we opened for business. We saw every buyer in New York. They all waited online. And the more important they were, the longer I made them wait. And we sold 40,000 pair of shoes in 2.5 days.
Whoa.
And the company to this day is still Kenneth Cole Productions.
Oh, my God.
We traded on the New York Stock Exchange for 10 years. And the symbol was KCP. And we keep the name because today everything is a production at some level, but I also believe that the best solution, and it's a constant reminder, is rarely the most expensive. It's almost always the most creative.
That is amazing. See this, why were you deflecting? This story is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And all right, so when you open the doors, first of all, so the truck on the outside to have Kenneth Cole Productions, like what drew people over to that truck? What did you do to stand out, to be different?
Well, it's Chemical Productions, and then quickly there were crowds and crowds draw crowds, and then people would tell each other, and then I'm sitting out there, and people would come and go to breakfast, go to dinner, and ordinarily at these trade shows, you're locked in your little room, but I was out there, seeing everybody, so I was able to lure them in, and we saw everybody, and at the end of the day, there was a phone booth on the corner and a lot of quarters. And I was calling the factory in Italy, and I was changing production as every day. A little more red, less blue, higher heel, less lower heel, and to this day, it's still to this day. We are a little scrappy and
Right.
agile, and hopefully relevant, and that's what the business is, and that's what's required to exist.
As you start selling shoes more and more and more there, were you kind of like, oh my God, this is really happening?
You know what? I wasn't, because I was delusional, and I just knew it would happen, and I didn't realize the risk reward, how much was potentially at stake. But I figured if it was wrong, I would course correct as I was doing it, and if I wasn't doing it right, had the mayor not supported this decision,
Right.
I would have found another way to get my product out there. But I've just been just maybe a little delusional in that regard, but I have been relentless and with a clear sense of how to make an impact.
Love that. I love that term, relentless.
And how to distinguish yourself.
Yeah, be different, right? And people are so afraid to be different. I try and tell young guys coming in the sports industry, right, all the time, hey, don't be a face in the crowd. Like, be the damn crowd. Be your own crowd. And hearing it from you is going to help a lot of other people also, and just on their journey. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's basically, and it's a lot of what you talk about too. Be yourself, because no one could do that better than you can, right. And that's different in and of itself. So and you can, and everything's okay, and everybody struggles, and I had this message. I've always thought from the very beginning, long before social media, I've tried to, in short sound bites, try to connect with people, and in meaningful ways to the degree that I could. But I think we had that campaign once and it was a proud member of a dysfunctional family, and because I came to realize everybody thinks their family's fucked up. Everybody thinks their family is dysfunctional, and we sold out every time. We sold out, and everybody was a proud member of the dysfunctional family. And then at the coalition, interestingly, I'm not sure why I'm telling you this, but at the coalition, we spoke to people who openly struggled and had mental illness. Is something that was part of how they defined themselves and their individual struggles, and that message wasn't so well embraced. And I came to realize that it's, if you feel you're the source of the dysfunction, you're not as proud of it, which is unfortunate. But the fact that other people are open to it, acknowledge that it exists, I think is a big deal.
I bond with that. I connect with it. Hey, one of my saying is I'm fucked up, but I'm good with my fucked upness. Right. It's hey, my parents took me to a therapist, my first therapist, when I was 4 or 5. Like, I was the fucked up one. Like, what I mean? Like, hello, look in the mirror here a little bit. So I think we're all part of some dysfunction in our families. But for me, when you say that, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm part of that crew. I don't have any shame in it. I'm like, I connected with what you just said. I loved it.
Right. Yeah. So, and so that is essentially, our goal and our objective is to be real, not to be delusional, and to understand and to understand where you are and where you want to be, and then figure out, and everything else is about the journey and how do we get there. So,
how long after that you had the truck out there in Manhattan? How long after that until you opened your first store? And where was it?
on 56th Street and 6th Avenue is where the truck was. And I opened a store about a year and a half later. But I opened a showroom. My first season of business, I sold shoes to Bloomingdale's, to Saks Fifth Avenue, to Macy's, to everybody that we would have wanted to sell shoes to. We picked. And then a year later, I had my own shop at Bloomingdale's. I was very lucky early on, but I was working. I was all the time, and it was who I was. It was what I did, and it's how I found pleasure. And I wasn't married at the time, so I didn't have to make as many sacrifices personally. But that is we all have to balance that all the time. We figure out how to make it all work, and so personal and professional, and then later on, how do you marry in kind of community and philanthropy, and that became the third leg on the stool, and how do you balance that? And I made that also part of the business. So and it's what we do, and it's how we allocate our resources, and it made everybody in the company work, I think, and feel so much better about working as hard as they were working, because there's no other way. There's no shortcuts.
Is there one shoe or clothing or article or anything that you've come out with that you're more proud of than others, or have like a special meaning? All together.
I guess, I don't know, maybe it's like your kids, you love them all. I don't know if there's any one specific shoe
or a line,
but shoes were my thing for a long time. Right. And I lived in the shoe business, and it's arguably the most difficult business that exists. And
why is that?
Part of it is because, no shoe fits everybody. I mean, a great fitting shoe that's a size 8 only fits maybe half the people who are size 8 even. And it doesn't fit any of the people who are 7.5 or 9 or 10 or so. And you've got to own inventory in all these sizes, and then you got to make everything, and it's got to be ready the minute people want it, and it's got to be available at the price they want. It's got to fit the way they need it, and then it's got to fit not just today but tomorrow. And there's a lot of variables at play, and we're in a lot of businesses today. We're in 26 different licensed businesses today.
Wow.
And none of them are as complicated as to this day as the shoe business. But
interesting.
But I love it in that regard, and just think every day how many people want to be in your shoes, Jay.
I like that. Or I like to say we all walk this walk together. There you go. Right. Before I let you go, I ask this to all my guests.
Yeah.
Give me your unbreakable moment, like the moment in your life that should have broken you, could have broken you, and because it didn't, you came through the other side of that tunnel and made you a lot stronger.
So I woke up one morning, and I have personal and I have professional, but I woke up one morning in business, and I realized that the stores were all the whole retail business in the United States was struggling, and then there was only a few retailers left. The Macy's was about to be acquired by Federated Department Stores, and they were both in debt up to their eyes, and they already had no service on the floor. And it became clear to me that in order for them to justify and afford this, they had to change their business model, which meant they were going to have to get rid of the middleman, and they were going to have to source product independently. And I realized, wait a second, I'm that middleman. And so I went back to sleep, took some aspirin, went back to sleep, woke up, and I said, wait a second, I don't have to be that middleman. If I open stores and I could become the destination, then I'm not the middleman anymore. They are. So I changed the business model and went public in order to fund opening stores. And I became a retailer, and I got focused on building the brand and not just creating cool shoes for cool people. So I don't know. Is that an unbreakable one?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because absolutely, because your business could have gone south fast, or it could have thrived, and it thrived.
Yeah, and that's all the time in our business. You know, that's I think how we've survived so long is that we've realistically looked in the mirror and acknowledged our vulnerability and addressed it, and personally as well too. And how do I spend so much time working on some of the social impact stuff too, and the business sometimes struggles as a result of it. And then then I'll go back to working in the business, and then the impact work struggles a little bit. So, and then my golf game sucks because of both of them.
That's at least your problems, man. We're good. Well, brother, man, I appreciate that. This has been fantastic. I always love connecting with you. Always love spending time with you. Love to spend more time with you. And
Jay, you're a role model for many of us, Jay. So keep up what you do and keep up that great spirit and energy and inspiring us, because love you. Love that I could do this to help you and
absolutely
work with.
That's what we do. Hey, you and I are walking this walk together.
Right. As they say,
you can take that from me if you want.
We're in this shit.